Today I want to teach you an exercise for the pelvic floor, and this can be used to either help strengthen your pelvic floor or help relax your pelvic floor. So we're going to start laying on our backs. Now you can do this in any position. I find that learning an exercise starting in this position tends to go a little bit better. And so if you're unfamiliar with diaphragmatic breathing, then you can go ahead and watch one of my previous videos. You're going to lay on your back, knees bent up towards the ceiling. You can let your hands rest on your belly or on your bed or the table, the floor. We're going to start to coordinate our breathing with our pelvic floor movement. So see if as you inhale, you can lengthen the pelvic floor. And as you exhale, see if you can engage your pelvic floor without engaging the other muscles of the hip, like your glutes or your inner thighs. Some people find it easier to feel their contraction or the activation of the pelvic floor, and some people feel it's easier to feel the relaxation or the lengthening of their pelvic floor. Some people don't feel anything. If you don't feel anything, then this next exercise might not be appropriate for you at this time. And you might want to work with a pelvic floor physical therapist in person to dive a little bit deeper and find out what's going on. Do you find that it's tricky for you to lengthen pelvic floor? And I'll teach you what to do. And if you find that it's challenging for you to engage your pelvic floor, then I will also teach you what to do. So I like to call this exercise the elevator exercise or the stair exercise. And so we're all going to practice on your next exhale, squeezing the pelvic floor as hard as you can. And then as you inhale, you'll let that go. So we're going to call that 100%. You might have felt other muscles engage, your abs, your inner thighs, your glutes, maybe your toes or your shoulders. So that's going to be what we call 100%. Now on this next repetition, as you exhale, we're going to squeeze the pelvic floor as hard as you can without turning on any other muscles. So isolating the pelvic floor, no glutes, no abs, no inner thighs. And then as you inhale, you'll let that go. And you can try that a couple times if you need to. We're going to call this 75%. Next, we're going to engage the pelvic floor about half of what you just did. So maybe using the exhale to engage. We'll call this 50%, and then inhaling to release back to your baseline. The pelvic floor is never really 0 unless you're pooping, peeing, or delivering a baby vaginally. But for now, we'll call it baseline or 0. And then finally, we're going to engage 25%. So just a little flicker, and then as you inhale, you'll let that go. Again, you can try any of these percentages or steps as many times as you need to. For some people, it's harder to engage more. For some people, it's harder to engage less. Now, if you struggle with lengthening the pelvic floor, what you're going to do is squeeze 75, drop down to 50, drop down to 25, and then drop down to 0. And that might be tricky for you. can practice it a couple times. If those steps are a little too challenging, you can just practice going to 75, 50, 0, maybe 75, 25, 0. However, if you struggle with engaging your pelvic floor, then we're going to do the opposite. So we're going to start by engaging just 25%, and then maybe go up to 50, and then 75, and then drop back down to 0. And again, you can take big steps or small steps. That feels easy for you, whichever version you're going to practice, then you can definitely practice in different positions. So you can practice this on your belly, maybe laying on your side. One side might feel different than the other. You can also practice on your hands and knees or in sitting. And then when you're all done practicing, we'll end with a few deep diaphragmatic breaths, lengthening the pelvic floor, just to make sure that you're not ending with more tension than you're starting with, especially if you're practicing engaging the pelvic floor or building the strength or contractions of the pelvic floor. Let me know if you have questions on that exercise, and I'll see you next time.